Welcome to Right Now Workshop Podcast. I'm your host, Kitty Bucholtz, and this is episode 16, 52 Stories in 52 Weeks. Now, last week when I was talking to you about what to write and how to decide between all the many ideas in your head, which one is the next one that you're going to bring from start to finish, very important. We need to finish all of our stories so that we can get them published and move on to the next. And I had a conundrum. My reader survey said my readers equally liked my 3 stories. Now, one of my YouTube viewers, Karen, and I'll save your privacy and not use your last name, but I wanted to mention you on the show, Karen, asked me, what are you going to do? What'd you decide, Kitty? And I have to say that I have decided that because my latest book is part of a fresh series and the ideas are fresh in my mind and readers want to know what's going to happen to the best friend characters, hint, they are going to get together, I decided I should go ahead and write that one next. So I am writing book 2 in the Strays of Loon Lake series next, where, how do I say it? Where lost men and stray dogs find love and a forever home. Yep, romantic comedy, that's what it is. So that's what I'm going to be working on. But if you're still not sure, like maybe you don't necessarily have a book idea, or maybe you just have so many ideas and none of them has really coalesced into a full story idea, there is another idea, another way that you could approach this. Now, I think I've mentioned this in a podcast before. I'm almost positive I've mentioned it in a blog post at some point in the last few months. But I recently was watching a YouTube video of Ray Bradbury speaking live at a writers' conference. I think it was in 2001. And he was talking about this challenge that he was putting out to writers to write 52 stories in 52 weeks. And part of me was like, what? Are you kidding me? But you have to remember, my problem is that it's not a problem. My challenge is that I write long. So the idea of writing and finishing an entire something, anything, in a week, and then doing it again and again and again, 52 weeks in a row, I was like, oh my gosh. But the idea was intriguing because what in the world would you write about? Well, once Ray said, think of 10 things that make you really mad. Think of your 10 favorite things in the world. Think of your 10 biggest fears. What are your 10 worst nightmares that you've had in your whole life? What are your 10 biggest dreams? And then I was thinking about that. There's like a little rhyming convention to remember a whole bunch of emotions that you should try to make sure your story characters are mad, bad, glad, they've been had, and I think there's a 5th one. Anyway, and I started thinking about those. I'm like, my gosh, that's like 100 ideas. If I could come up with 10 ideas in each of these categories, like that's 2 years worth of writing challenge. And the idea just kept niggling away in my head. I couldn't quite let it go. I actually started talking to some of my writer friends. Hey, what do you think? Should we try this 52 stories in 52 week challenge, which I've just now been abbreviating it down to, should we try the 52 and 52 challenge? And I don't have a solid start time. I decided not to force myself to start it on January 1st, but I am pretty darn sure I'm going to do it. And I might not do it necessarily 1 a week religiously, absolutely, come rain or snow. But I think that I would like to, at the date that I start, do 52 within 52 weeks. Part of the reason why I couldn't quite get the idea out of my head was because when I was in grad school, I went to University of Technology, Sydney, in Sydney, Australia, and got my Master of Arts degree in creative writing. And one of the things that was most interesting to me is when I was in a class that would force you to write all sorts of different things, even things that you're like, I would never write that, so like that's kind of a waste of time. But it helped you to figure out, you would find things where you're like, I can't believe I just wrote like a little scene from a fantasy story. I've never written fantasy, but I've got, like crazy magic and characters that are running from other magical. Anyway, I was like, really surprised. I was really surprised that I was able to write this and that I really kind of thought it was good. I was a little bit surprised at how difficult it was for me to write like a detective gumshoe sort of scene. Other scenes that I was like, oh, I had no idea. Like people have told me, have you ever thought about writing YA? But then when I was forced to write something that was YA, it actually ended up being kind of YA suspense. I'm like, oh, that was kind of good and fun. So the really interesting thing about what I had to do in grad school and this challenge is that it really just opens up your creative brain to consider possibilities you hadn't considered before, which by its very definition is in fact being more creative, which, can't hurt us when we're writing. And I have to say that even if you were writing nonfiction primarily, it could be a really interesting challenge to come up with 52 different story ideas or to write 52 fiction ideas. Or here's the other thing, write 52 limericks. Or write a limerick one week and a nonfiction idea one week and a fiction idea one week, and try a detective gumshoe kind of scene one time, try a fantasy swords and sorcery kind of thing one time, try a historic thing. I mean, the more you just keep on going. And then, oh my gosh, I loved the idea about writing about some of my weird dreams or nightmares, writing about biggest fears. All these things just kind of make my imagination churn and get all bubbly and delicious. And I think, oh boy, there's something interesting is going to happen here. So I thought I would encourage you. Maybe you want to try this challenge. I am definitely going to start it. I'm just not willing to put a date on it yet. As I've mentioned, it's early in 2018, and I expect to be moving somewhere in the next few months probably because of my husband's job. So I don't know exactly when I'll start it, but I wanted to give you the idea because maybe you want to start it now. You could also not worry too much about, oh, it's got to be 52 and I don't want to do it because that'll just stress me out just thinking about having to do it. So think about, you could do one a month, or you could do it any way you wanted to. I mean, the whole idea is to challenge yourself creatively. One of my friends has written 4 different kinds of scenes and she's posted them on her blog. And then she's asking her readers, what do you want to see the next scene of? And so whatever they like, she'll write another few scenes for next month. And then it got me thinking about, different things that I could do. I've always wanted to do kind of a choose your own adventure book where I get to the end of a chapter and I'm like, do you think Tom and Sally should go to the city or run and hide in the jungle so that they won't be caught? And then, readers would choose, and then I would actually have to write what happened either way so that they could read whichever their choice was. Anyway, there's so many interesting creative things that we could do. And so hopefully this will help fuel your imagination on what you want to do. The whole point is to exercise your creative brain. And Ray insists that nobody could write 52 bad stories in a row. And I would have to say, that would be a challenge. I mean, can you imagine writing 52 things in a row and all 52 of them are crap? Even if you think you can imagine it, I don't think you could actually do it. I think you would have to try. I think you would end up with at least 1 or 2 things that were like, that was actually really interesting. And imagine now that you're trying to make them all interesting. I would say you'd probably have at least 30 that would turn out to be something interesting enough to continue, or to, if it was a finished story, to, consider sending out to a magazine or something. I hope your mind is churning with as much creative ideas as mine is. Remember, the tagline for the Right Now workshop is write a book, change the world. I totally believe that can happen. And the whole idea of 52 brand new, crazy, wild, amazing, ridiculous ideas wandering around in your head for the next, however long, but let's say 52 stories in 52 weeks. I think that's a challenge that we should work on sometime this year. What do you think? All right, I hope you're having a great week. I'll talk to you later.